And that's why I started off this national conversation talking about entitlement reform. You know, political advisors everywhere cringe when a politician dares to bring up entitlement reform. They tell you it's the third rail of American politics. Do not touch it. Okay? I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to hug it. Okay? We're going to hug it. And here's why, everybody, because if you take entitlements and debt service, that's 71% of the federal budget right now. Think about that. 71% of the federal budget. When John Kennedy became president in 1960, it was 26% of the federal budget. Now, Social Security, in my mind, was supposed to be what it said it was. Security against anyone who's worked hard in our country, growing old in poverty. Now, the average age and life expectancy of a woman today in America is 83 years old. The average age of a man in his life expectancy is 79 years old. Now, I see some of the women out here smiling. I want to remind you that 10 years ago, you had a 6-year lead on us. We're gaining, ladies. We are gaining on you. You may be stuck with us for your entire life. You may get no break. But at 83 and 79, these programs were designed where people died in their 60s. Now we're living much longer and much better lives, and that is a blessing. And we should celebrate it. But we also need to get smart about the fact that it affects these programs and their solvency. So I've said, yes, let's raise the retirement age for Social Security 2 years and phase it in over the next 25 years. Listen to that now. 2-year increase, phased in over 25 years. When the phasing is complete, I'll be 77 years old, God willing. Right? This will not allow the world to stop spinning on its axis. And I've also said we need to means test Social Security. We already means test Medicare. We should means test Social Security. And here's exactly what I intend. That if you make $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, not assets, that means you got $4 or $5 million put away. God bless you. Great job. America's been good to you and you've been good to America. Do you really need your Social Security check? If you're making over $200,000 a year in retirement, do you need that check? Or is the check and that money really needed for the middle-class guy or woman who's worked hard their whole lives, helped to put their kids through school, still paying off their house? And that makes the difference between making the mortgage payment and buying food. That makes the difference between paying the heating bill or going to the doctor. Now, I had a guy when I was doing a town hall meeting in Exeter, New Hampshire, at a place called Shooter's Bar. Yes, you can imagine how good I am when I get a town hall meeting in a bar. I tell you, I scale new heights when people are drinking, believe me. This guy yelled out at me, "Hey, I paid for it. I paid for it." I said, "You did. But there's also lots of things in life you pay for just for the security of knowing you have it if you need it." We all who own a home buy homeowners insurance, right? We buy that homeowners insurance so in case the house burns down, we have the money to rebuild it. Now, if you live in that house for 30 years and nothing happens, and then you go to sell it, and you go to the closing, and you say to the insurance company, "Hey, by the way, I didn't make any claims. Can I have my money back?" They laugh at you, right? Because what they say to you is, what you got was the security of knowing that if you needed it, we were there. That's what you're paying for. Same thing with Social Security and with Medicare. Let's raise that eligibility age 2 years and phase it in over the next 25. And if you make over $200,000 a year retirement income, let's not subsidize your Medicare premiums 75% anymore. Let's subsidize them 10%. You have the money, let's do it. And let's make sure Medicare is there for the people who can't afford it and would otherwise have to present in an emergency room as a charity case. We don't want that. We don't need that. We shouldn't have it. But there are folks who will run for president who will tell you, "We can't do that." Governor Huckabee said, "We can't do that. This is a sacred trust, and if we allow the government to lie to us and steal from us, what's left?" Well, I have an announcement for Governor Huckabee. The lying and the stealing already happened. You're late. It already happened. Remember back in 2000, Al Gore told us there was a lockbox? Let me tell you what's in the lockbox. A pile of IOUs, everybody. We're spending that money now and we're giving you IOUs for later. The lying and stealing happened. The horse is already out of the barn. It's too late to close the door. We got to get to the hard work of dragging the horse back into the barn. That's much harder because the horse doesn't want to be there. But we need to do it. See, my point on this is, I trust the American people. Because every one of you, while I'm saying this, is not in your head. Like, you get it, you know. You know. Why don't we trust you to talk about it? I'm not saying that my ideas are the be-all and end-all, and that it's my way or the highway. My gosh, I work with the Democratic legislature every day in New Jersey. My way or the highway got out of my vocabulary about 6 years ago. I know we got to work together, and we got to compromise. See, that's the problem with the Washington, D.C. crowd. They forgot about compromise a long time ago. And that's both parties, by the way. They think it's easier to stand in front of that bank of microphones in Washington, call the other side names, give long speeches on the floor, hold their breath and do nothing, and then come home and tell you it wasn't my fault, it was the other guy. Well, the only person who can fix this is a strong president. The same way in New Jersey, I've worked with Democrats across the aisle and worked with Republicans who are with me to cap property taxes, to reduce business taxes $2.3 billion, to balance 6 budgets in a row, to reform the oldest 10-year law in America, to reform pension and benefit systems, which was just upheld by our Supreme Court, to reduce spending on everything other than pensions and health benefits, $2.5 billion over the last 6 years, to cut or reduce over 800 programs, all of the Democratic legislature. How did that happen? It happened because I was not willing to give up. I was not willing to stop speaking out. And I also was willing to sit down with the other side and compromise when we needed to. That's what we need to do in Washington. And it's time, everybody, because it doesn't matter who's going to be in Congress then when we elect a new president. It might be all Republican. I hope it is. It could be split. We don't know. But whatever it is, there are going to be challenges that we need to face. And we need a Republican president who's going to be strong and resolute and talk truth to the American people and to the Congress. And to not be afraid. Not be afraid to do that. You should be done with the sound bites and the prepackaged focus group tested stuff that you get fed all the time. And you know, being here with mutual friends in the Northeast, you know I'm probably the most psychoanalyzed politician in America. Every time I open my mouth, somebody's got a theory as to why I said what I said. You know, why does he say the things he says? Why does he say them the way he says them? Well, I'll end today by explaining to you why. So the psychoanalysis can be stopped or go on to another topic. Here's the thing. You know this is true. We're all products of our parents. For good and for bad, we're all products of our parents. I have an Irish father, and I had a Sicilian mother. Yeah, exactly. I want to say to all of you, you know what that means. As the oldest child in that family, I became an expert at dispute resolution at a very early age. I want to say that my mother was argumentative. Let me just say that she just never found an argument that she didn't think was worth having. I tell my dad all the time, in the automobile of life, he was a passenger. Mom was the driver. She set the rules. She set the rules. She told us from the time we were very young, be yourself. Because then tomorrow you don't have to worry about pretending, who you remember who you pretended to be yesterday. It's great advice. And she lived it, believe me. She used to also say, there's no suffering in silence in this house. If you have a problem, speak out. If you don't, I don't care. And she was the leader of that parade, by the way. She used to have every grievance she had laid out to us. And when we got older, we were able to answer back a little bit. We used to say, Mom, stop. We get it. Stop. Do I need to hear this now? And she looked at me and said, yes, Christopher, you need to hear it now. I need to get it off my chest. She'd say, there are going to be no deathbed confessions in this family, buddy. You're hearing it now. So this is the way I was raised. These were the rules of the game in our house. And so, when someone from the media asks me a stupid question, that's why I say, that's a stupid question. I'm not answering it. When a protester stands up and keeps yelling and interrupting my speech, and I tell him I'll meet with him later and talk to him later, but he just keeps yelling and waving that sign at me, that's why I look at him and say, sit down and shut up. These are not accidents, everybody. This is not a temporary loss of control. This is who I am. And I wonder whether or not the American people are really tired. Tired of having a hand-wringing professor in the Oval Office who can't make decisions, is unwilling to tell the American people the truth. Maybe it's time to have somebody who's unafraid to make decisions and anxious to tell the American people what's in my heart and on my mind. Dad is 82 years old, and he lives on the Jersey Shore, and he watches what I'm doing all the time, believe me. Yesterday, I was in New Hampshire, and I had forgotten that we were releasing our jobs report for the month. All of a sudden, the text comes in. My father said, congratulations on 12,200 new private sector jobs. Good work. I turned to my communications director, I go, did we release the job report today? And she said, yes. And I'm like, man, I have no idea, but my father's right on top of things. It's good. And it's a blessing to have him around. Because he lost his dad when he was 16 years old. He was number one in his class, top of his high school class when his father passed away. He got offered admission to Columbia University. He couldn't go. Because his family was too poor now that his father had died for him to even think about going to college. He had to leave high school, graduate, and go to work. Then he got drafted into the Army during Korea. He served our country. He came home. Family was still too poor, so he went and got a job at the Breyers ice cream plant in Newark. That's where he worked. And he was lucky to have a good man who worked next to him, older man, who kept saying to him, you're a really smart guy, why are you here? He's like, well, it's a good job, pays pretty good, I can walk to work and I get free ice cream. It's not bad. And he's in his 20s. What did he know? He kept saying to him, you have to go to college. You're a veteran. You go on the GI Bill. You can work. You should do this. Finally, he practically dragged my father down to Rutgers in Newark. Signed him up for a couple of classes. And nobody in his family had ever gone to college. And my mother, also the product of a single mom. She's the oldest child in her family, and she had to work. Couldn't even think about going to college. And my mother said all the time that her favorite picture was our first family picture, she called it. It was my father 6 years later on his graduation day from Rutgers in Newark. He had his cap and gown on, and my mother was standing next to him, 6 months pregnant with me. She had that picture on her dresser for most of her life. They both had these huge smiles on their faces. They were so proud because they felt like they'd overcome the odds. No one expected him to get there. My father got his degree in accounting, he became a CPA, and worked that way for the rest of his life. He overcame the odds of the early death of a father in difficult economic times by serving his country and working hard all during the day at that ice cream plant and going to school at night. I'm sure bone tired lots of nights. But he did it because he wanted something better for him and for my mother. And he wanted something better for the children that they were about to have. Now think about it. One generation removed from the guy who was working in the Breyers ice cream plant and going to school at night. His son is the 2-term governor of New Jersey. It's what makes this country so great. I talk about my mom in the past tense because we lost her 11 years ago. And she was a lifetime smoker. And on Valentine's Day of 2004, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And you know how this goes. Sometimes it's aggressive and sometimes it isn't. I'm sure lots of people in this audience have experienced this in your own family or your friends. So I was U.S. attorney at the time. By the end of April, I was at a U.S. Attorney's conference in San Diego, and my brother called me, and he said to me, listen, Mom's taking a real turn for the worse. We had to put her back in the hospital, and if you want to see her again, you need to come now, right away. So I took the red-eye flight that night from San Diego back to New Jersey. I landed at Newark Airport. I got in the car. I drove to the hospital where she was, and they started giving her morphine. As you know, right near the end, she's in a lot of pain, and they're trying to control that and make her comfortable, but it kind of made her go in and out of things. So I sat there for a while and waited for her to come to, and she did. It was typical of my mother. Now, she hadn't seen me for a week. When she came to, there was no hello or how are you, how was your week? There was none of that. She said, what day is it? I said, it's Friday. She said, what time is it? I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. She said, go to work. I said, you know, Mom, listen, I've decided to take the day off. I'm taking the day off today. I'm going to spend it with you. And she said to me, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. I said, Mom, what are you worried about? Not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? Like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. She leaned over, she grabbed my hand, she goes, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There is nothing left unsaid between us. It was an incredibly powerful moment in my life. She's giving me permission to let her go. And you know, it was the perfect end to what she had been teaching us our whole life, right? Remember, she said to me, you're going to hear it now, there are going to be no deathbed confessions in this family. She was right. See, she had laid every grievance out on the table with me, and I had laid my grievances out with her. She had shown me and told me over and over how much she loved me and believed in me. And I had told her how much I loved her and how much I owed to her. And so I did what my mother told me to do. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead. I said, I'll see you later, and I went to work. And that afternoon, she went into a coma. And she never came out. She died 3 days later. But she died with no regrets. And I watched her die with no regrets. And I know that if my mom were still alive to see this circus that my life has become, she'd have two things to say for certain. She'd have a lot more than two. But two things I'm certain of. The first one she would say is, listen, Christopher, don't get big shot with me. You're the governor, you're thinking about running for president of the United States. I changed your diapers. I know you. So under control, buddy. And the second thing she would say to me is, if you're really thinking about this, if you're really thinking about asking these people to give you the greatest sign of trust they can give to anybody outside their family, and that is to elect you President of the United States, then you better tell them everything that's in your heart and everything that's on your mind. Because in a trusting relationship, that's what you do. And you're asking them for an enormous display of trust in you, so you better tell them what you think and what you feel. You better crack open your chest and show them your heart. They deserve that. And so if I do this, that's the way I'm going to do it. And some days I'll say things that are certainly going to make you uncomfortable. Some days I'm going to say things that will make you shake your head and say, I cannot believe he said that out loud. That's an inside thought, not an outside thought. But I hope also there'll be days where you say, I'm glad someone finally said that out loud. I'm glad someone finally did that. I'm glad someone finally trusts me enough to tell me the truth. Let me tell you, everybody, if we want to be Hillary Clinton, that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. If we want the American people to trust us rather than Secretary Clinton, they got to see our heart. Got to know what we're willing to fight for and what we believe in. And the one promise I'll make to you, if I decide to run, is this. I will always tell you what I think, what I believe, what I feel, and what I'm willing to fight for. And if I tell you I'm willing to fight for something, I think the people in this room who have watched me closely over the last 6 years knows this much. That's going to be a hell of a fight to watch. Right. And that's the kind of fight we need to have to put our country back on the right track. That's the kind of fight we need to have a party lead in every region of this country. And that's the kind of fight we need to have to restore order and peace and prosperity to the world, with America taking the lead and being the leader again in the 21st century the way we were in the 20th century. If you all are willing to have that fight, that is going to be a great fight to have, and one that will do something for our children that all of us have promised silently to each other. to leave this country a better place for our children and grandchildren than was left for us. It is the most solemn obligation we have as Americans, and we don't want to be part of the first generation who violates that solemn oath. So I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure we don't, and if you do, then we're going to have a lot to celebrate in November 2016. Thank you all very much.
What about other people?